biggest issues plaguing modern men is that the vast majority of them lack a tribe of other virtuous, trustworthy, masculine men who gather for the sole purpose of improving themselves and their lives on a daily basis. Most men simply float through space, working a dead-end job, only to go home to a nagging wife or girlfriend that doesn't respect them. Their friend circles are nothing but fat, low testosterone losers who are more concerned with what sports teams are playing this weekend and what bar they're going to watch the game at. If these men are lucky enough to unplug from the comforting lies that modern society sells them and decide they want more out of life, they look around and realize they need to get into a better room. That's where a private community of men chasing excellence comes in. Men in our community have all committed to being the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be. They willingly run toward challenges, knowing that pushing themselves out of their comfort zones is the key to unlocking their true potential as men. If you're ready to take control of your life back and curate a network of successful and knowledgeable men, now is the time to seize the opportunity.
All right, there we go. Now the mic's on. How you guys doing? Kind of a last minute video, and it's live because my GoPro is not cooperating. I was trying to do this in the car today, and it's time sensitive and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if it needs a full factory reset or I need a new one, but we're going to do this on the cold, hard truth. Okay, so I got a bunch of notes here, and I've been trying to hold off on the publishing of this broadcast until some more information came in, because a week ago, if you're unfamiliar, a regional jet landed on its roof in Toronto Pearson Airport. I happen to live in the area, and I was driving back from the ski hills that day, and the weather was not good. It wasn't the worst, but it wasn't good. So in this video, I want to share what I've come across, because I've been doing some digging, and I've had some insiders provide some information. I've watched some pilots assess the situation on YouTube. So I'm going to summarize all that first, and I want to let you in on a little bit of a private conversation I had with an Air Canada pilot in my 20s, because I was in my youth contemplating getting into aviation on a more serious level. And he revealed something to me, which I thought was very interesting, which not many people know today. And I think DEI is a serious issue, so much of a serious issue. In fact, I am no longer going to fly on airlines that endorse, condone, use DEI hiring protocols, and I'll explain why in this video. So, doing this in podcast form. Apologies for the crap lighting. One of my lights aren't working either, so it's another problem I got to fix today. Hopefully, we'll get that going for tonight or tomorrow night for chopping it up. So, the captain's name was James Hinneman. 17 years indicated on LinkedIn as far as his tenure. So, plenty of experience. He was also a simulator instructor, and had been flying the CRJ aircraft, the Bombardier regional jet, since 2007. You could say he's more than qualified to pilot, land, take off aircraft like this. I don't know what his total flight hours logged on it, but if you're flying since 2007, it's going to be probably in the tens of thousands, I would imagine, including sim instruction, all the other stuff. But 17 years in total flying. So I would imagine he's probably in his 40s, maybe early 50s. Don't know for sure. The gal that was flying the aircraft, it has been confirmed, is 26 years old, Kendall Swanson, beauty pageant winner, apparently. I had a look at the beauty pageant photographs. I think that state should probably raise their standards for beauty pageants awards, but let's carry on. She was certified 6 weeks prior to the accident. Some of the pilots were saying, well, the paperwork could have been held up. She could have been certified sooner. Maybe there was this, that, and the other thing. But the fact remains she didn't get certification until 6 weeks prior to the incident of her parking the aircraft on its roof. I think I have some visuals here on the side. Let me see if I can pull them up. Yeah, I've got quite a few actually. I'll get to those in a second. Let me just go through the highlights. She had a restricted certificate and less than 1,500 hours, so she couldn't be a pilot, from what I understand, according to the standards run through the government. New to the job, apparently her Facebook has been deleted, so don't go looking for that or bothering her. The pilots that were feeding back on the information they discovered were saying, don't jump to conclusions. Let's wait and see what the investigation reveals. Let's wait and listen to the flight recorders and the cockpit audio recordings and blah, blah, blah. But there's been more than 2 sources that have confirmed that the 26-year-old was landing the plane at the time. Now, if you didn't see the video, let me pull up some of these tabs over here because I've got a few to potentially share with you, and I'll get into the story that I have from my conversation in my 20s with this Air Canada pilot. Sorry, I just got to open up all these tabs. I'm a little pressed for time tonight. I didn't have enough to prepare for it, but here we go. Okay, so minimize this, and let's throw them all over my other window so I can give you the visuals. I know some of you probably haven't seen them all. Maybe some of you have seen some of them. It might be repetitive, but there's a point to this and why I'm bringing these up. Here we go. They're not in, I mean, they should be in a particular order for me to present this to you, but unfortunately, like I said, GoPro wasn't cooperating today, and I'm trying to do this off the cuff. Present, share screen, and here we go. Again, they're not in any particular order. Okay, so the first one here we've got, let's see if we can resize this a little bit better for the screen. Why is my computer doing this? Hang on a second. Hang on a second, ladies and gentlemen. Let's fix this. This looks like the dog's breakfast on my screen over here. Really? You're going to do this to me live? Yeah. Let's try this again. Yeah, it's happening in real time. It's all right. I'm going to have to reopen all these again because the tabs aren't opening in the right spot. Sorry, guys. Bear with me. I'll get you. I'll get you. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I know you don't come to my channel for the high tech, but I'll fix you up with the quality of the information and the conversations on the back end. Okay, here we go. Now I've got it fixed. Okay, so present, share screen, and boom. Okay, so this is our DEI hire over here. Kendall Swanson, you can see her over here. This is obviously the photograph of the aircraft parked on its roof. We'll get to some other images as well. What do we have highlighted over here? Swanson, who was recently certified as an airline transport pilot on January 9th, 2025, had a relatively brief career in aviation. Rumors circulate that just a year ago, she was an instructor pilot for small propeller aircraft and had only recently been licensed to co-pilot small jets before the crash. Okay, we can close this one now. Let's pull up the next tab, present and share. And here we go. The first thing that I asked when I saw this happen, and again, I've always been a big fan of aviation. It's been my stick. I have a massive wall over here. You can't see because the way the camera's situated of World War II military. I wanted to be a RAF fighter pilot for the Harrier jump jets when I was a kid, when I saw the Falkland War unfold. It's too big for the cockpit. Long story short, went on to plan B, and here we are. So aviation is very interesting to me, just like fast cars and motorcycles and that sort of stuff. So having seen the accident, having living in the city, and the video footage of it, surprisingly, everybody survived, thank God. But one of the wings sheared off, the tail section sheared off, landed on its roof. And, you know, some people did say to me like, oh, you know, it's a miracle. She must have been an amazing pilot to have done all those things and everybody survived. No. As soon as the landing gear sheared off and the wing hit the runway, that was it. She didn't have any control over the aircraft after that. It was sheer luck in the hand of God slowing that thing down and making sure nobody burned up alive in the fireball. I did ask on the day that it occurred when I saw the photograph, hey, Delta, what are the names of the pilots? Because I had a sneaking suspicion that it was a DEI hire. Well, I think we shared this the other day on a video that Moff about. Oops. And you can see this is the pinned video on Delta's TikTok. And what they're basically saying is they're calling them unmanned crews. And, you know, the flight cockpit is all women. The ground crew is all women. The engineers are all women. The flight attendants obviously are all women. And they're very proud of the fact that they're all women. And I asked the question again on social media, did DEI hires have anything to do with the recent Toronto Pearson crash? It's a fair question, I think. Here is the visual of the aircraft coming in and destroying itself on the runway. This was filmed from a private jet, by the way, is what I understand. There was a private jet that was taxiing to take off. And as one does, if you're interested in aviation, I would imagine you bust out your cell phone and you record aircraft. And he just happened to catch the accident happen. So this is the plane coming down, smashing into the runway, shearing off the landing gear, flipping over on its roof, tail section breaks off, fireball, boom. And the guy in the private jet just basically freaking out. But that's the video footage of the incident. And of course, comedy does ensue in situations like this. Oops, 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 oops. If you guys are unfamiliar, there was I believe it was either Australian or New Zealand Navy, where they put a captain in charge of one of their expensive boats and they ran it aground. And of course, anybody that's been involved with women in the past know what their cars look like. I've never seen a woman's car that hasn't had a scraped up rim or bumper or something like that. The jokes are funny because there's truth to them. Okay, if we can put it that way. I did have another post on Twitter X, which I didn't bookmark here. Let me see if I got it. No, I don't. Where there was a flight engineer who had responded to one of my tweets because I had said something along the lines of, and this is where I'm going to start to put on my predictions because I think this is what's going to be revealed. I don't know if they'll ever fully release the cockpit audio recordings. I believe they'll probably be too damning, and I think the airline will probably redact them, or the investigation will probably cast it aside. We don't know, but I suspect what ended up happening is our pilot James Hinneman, with 17 years experience flying these jets since 2007, probably the most qualified guy to take control of landing an aircraft in less than ideal conditions, probably said, hey, you just got certified last month. Why don't you take this one and see if you can handle the conditions, right? Because that's what guys do, right? And this engineer was saying in the comments of one of my posts, he said, I've been a aircraft mechanic engineer for whatever it was, 25, 30 years, and I've seen the most composed, situated, tenured pilots, like the old white guys, turn into a puddle of goo when they put a woman in the cockpit. They turn into a blubbering, blah, 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 oh, look, boobies are in the cockpit, basically is what he described to me. And I suspect what ended up happening was our older pilot here, when you put a young 26-year-old gal who's a beauty pageant winner in the cockpit, he's like, take the controls. Why don't you see if you can handle these less than ideal conditions? And she ended up parking it on the roof, is what ended up happening at the end of the day. But I'm speculating now, of course. People are going to say, oh, who hurt you, Rich? Why are you saying these things? Well, you can call me whatever you want, but I'm pretty sure when they release all the information, you won't be able to call me a liar. Okay? So there's that. Now, onwards to the last part that I wanted to talk about, which was my conversation with an Air Canada pilot in my 20s. So I did mention at the set-off, I had the inkling. I had the calling to aviation as a young man. Like I said, I wanted to fly the RAF Harrier jump jet, having seen the Falkland War unfold. Applied for the position. I was born in England, so I qualified for it. Too big for the cockpit. You have to be less than 5'8". I'm 6'2". Wasn't going to happen. So that dream passed on. So I started thinking to myself, well, what about if I fly airlines? Well, as it happens, when I was 23, I was dating a gal who was who had a stepdad who was an Air Canada pilot, and I had a conversation with him once. I said to him, look, I'm thinking about aviation. I'd like to fly planes. What does it take? How do you get certified? What are the steps that are involved? So he said, son, let me sit you down and have a conversation, which we had. He was a nice guy. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was probably flying about a third of the month. So 10 days on, 20 days off or something like that. But basically, he had a lot of free time. He was explaining the benefits. The pay was strong. The incentives were good. He was able to take care of, at the time, my girlfriend's mother, who was basically retired because of him, because he was so well off. You know the stories. You follow my channel, so single mom meets successful pilot. They make it happen. So I'm having this conversation. He's breaking it down for me, all the stuff that he had to do, and at the end of it, he basically said, "But I took the wrong route." I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. So what's the better route?" And he said, "Actually, the vast majority of pilots that the airlines are hiring," this was in my 20s at the time. I don't know when the policy changed or how it changed, but we'll get into that in a second, were in fact retired military pilots, fighter jets. So at Air Canada, he said a lot of the pilots they were taking on were coming from the CF-18 program, which is the F-18 Hornet. If you saw Top Gun 2, that was a Super Hornet, kind of the successor to it. But a lot of airlines, apparently, he was telling me, hire ex-military pilots. I imagine they probably have their career. They pull massive G's for 10, 15, 20 years. And, the military is like, yeah, you're too old to deal with this shit. So we're going to retire you, give you a pension. And they go look to do something else. And they typically, apparently, at that time, were flying for airlines, which was great. Which is why every time, whenever I got on a plane as a young man and I looked in the cockpit, as I always do and still do today, I always saw two old white guys in there, probably named Kevin and Steve, who looked very competent, were very composed, had no interest in trying to please a young 26-year-old Kendall Swanson in the cockpit, because they're two old white straight guys, probably married with families and all that sort of stuff, and just, doing their time and having a good time and making some good money and stuff like that. So I found that very interesting. I've never heard that story told anywhere else before, but that's how most airlines apparently were finding their pilots. Retired jet fighter guys, air refuel tanking guys, transport pilots, bomber pilots. They're flying multi-million dollar, expensive taxpayer-funded aircraft that had to be done right. And the reason why the airlines like to hire those guys was because the military was exceptionally diligent in who they put in their taxpayer-funded F-16s, bombers, B-2 bombers, all that sort of stuff. As they should, because only the best should be promoted into positions to fly expensive taxpayer-funded military hardware, which then went into airlines, cabins. But that's changed today. In the last several flights that I've taken, I've seen DEI hiring protocols in the cockpit. I've seen a lot more women, which I never saw before, young women often. I've seen, what they'll call people of color in the cockpit. Now, if these DEI hires are so proficient and so good at what they're doing, the question that I pose to you as my viewers and those that are challenging me right now saying, Rich, who hurt you? Why are you saying these things? This is very mean. The question I ask you is, why haven't they gone through the standard military ranks, done their 10, 20 years flying fast jets, and then retired and said, I want to fly airlines? It's a legitimate question. Why aren't they going that route? And I would suspect because it's too hard. It's probably a lot easier to get hired from an airline that has DEI hiring protocols, that has that has quotas for chicks and anything else that fills between chicks and the other side of DEI. So with that being said, it's my encouragement to you, and it's my position today that I'm taking, that I am no longer going to fly any airline that has DEI hiring protocols. I refuse to do so. I'm not putting my life in danger. I love travel. I love aviation, but I want Steve and Kevin in the cockpit again. I want the old white dudes that are retired military pilots, that are just kind of going through the autumn years of their life, and it's easy for them. They can probably do it blindfolded. They can probably do it with one pilot with one arm tied behind his back in a critical situation, I would imagine. This is what I would like to see more of coming back today. And I suspect that with the Trump presidency and with the change, the way the pendulum's swinging the other way, I suspect the airlines, and I did ask AI the other day when I was doing some searching on it. I said, what airlines are using DEI hiring protocols? And apparently some of them are shifting. Southwest is shifting. American seems to be shifting. A lot of European airlines, and definitely the Middle Eastern airlines like Qatar or whatever, they have zero DEI hiring protocols. I would imagine everybody in a Qatari double-decker Airbus is probably an old, Egyptian, Saudi Arabian fighter pilot or something like that that's retired, and now they're flying these things. So I'll only be taking flights with airlines that do not have DEI hiring protocols, because I do not wish to land on a runway with one wing sheared off, a landing gear sheared off, and on the roof of the plane again, let's be honest, the hand of God saved those people on that plane. It's sheer luck. It had nothing to do with pilot skill. Anyway, what do you guys think? I wanted to make the video today. I didn't want to have to fix the GoPro, deal with all this crap later. I'll fix it. I think you guys get the point. You guys get the point. I always thought pilots were tall. That's an interesting fact, because certain planes have smaller cockpits, and the RAF Harrier jump jet is not a big plane. If you ever built a plastic model or you've ever seen one in real life, they're quite small, but there are some bigger planes out there. And, I have seen some taller pilots. Then DEI tries to erase white history created by white men. New Zealand was the ship. Thank you for clarifying that, train driver Nick. Also a woman in the DC crash. I think you're referencing the Apache helicopter, the military helicopter that collided with the plane on the glide approach. The other thing I forgot to mention was there's this process called flaring that I was made aware of on some of the pilot videos that I was watching. And what was the gal's name? Kendall Swanson did not flare the plane, is what a lot of the pilots observed, which is when they come down, they generally tip up the nose a little bit to scrub off some speed and soften the landing. They didn't see any evidence of the plane flaring before the landing, which is why they said it sheared off the landing gear. So we'll find out what the truth is when you tune into next year's or 2 years episode of Mayday Crash Toronto Pearson, plane lands on its roof situation. And I'll be interested to tune in to see what they say at that time, because I wonder how much of what I'm predicting today to be true. I'd love to hear the cockpit voice recorders coming in for the landing, because I suspect some version of that conversation happened. And I guess we'll find out when they do all that. But thanks for tuning in tonight. Doing chopping up tomorrow night with Moff. Got a bunch of stuff to talk about. Lining up a show for Wednesday for the Unplugged Alpha. So we'll see you guys very soon. Have an awesome night. All right, guys. If you enjoyed that podcast, make sure you visit my website at richcooper.ca to learn more about my courses, my book, The Unplugged Alpha, community, or booking me for private coaching. Also, if you are a Canadian with $15,000 or more of credit card debt and what you are doing right now isn't paying off the balances, then visit totaldebtfreedom.ca and hit get a free quote to see if you qualify to settle your credit card debt for less than you owe today over the next 48 months. Make sure you check out the top pinned comment on YouTube for all the links mentioned during the show. Peace.